Warm greetings, my dear CA students. This is CA Kavitha a chartered accountant in practice. Today, I am going to take 10 minutes of your time on the topic E-Invoicing, which is a recent updation in GST. Okay, so why? What is the background for this E-Invoice? Why we need E-Invoicing? As we all know, when we come across the newspapers in a daily basis, we can see a lot of GST cases which has been filed against claiming fake input tax credit on just filing an ITC, claiming an ITC while with producing fake invoices. This has been a regular cases. So how to done away with this? So that's why they thought that the authorities thought they have to introduce an unique invoicing scheme which can identify or clearly shows a differentiation between a original invoice and a fake invoice. So that's there arise the concept of e-invoicing. Fine. So and apart from that, there are very many advantages of introducing e-invoicing. Let us see one by one. So now we'll start with what is invoicing is basically. So invoicing is basically when you sell a product, a seller is supposed to issue an invoice. And from the date of introduction of GST, issuing the invoice is mandatory, okay, for each registered person for various other reasons. Fine. So now we will move on to what is the applicability of invoicing. So with effect from 1st October 2020, all the registered person whose turnover is exceeding 500 crores have to definitely issue e-invoice. Okay. So that 500 crores has to be counted aggregate turnover. It may be in any previous financial year from 1718, either 1819, or if for in any of the financial year, if their turnover exceeds 500 crore, then e-invoicing is compulsory and mandatory with effect from 1st October 2020. And this scheme has been extended to people whose turnover is increased more than 100 crores from 1st January to 2021, and again the 50 crores from 1st April. It is for the registered person whose turnover is exceeding 50 crores. So as of today's status, any business organization having a turnover exceeding 50 crores should mandatorily issue e-invoice. So what are the supplies covered under e-invoice? So okay, fine. Now we have understood who has to issue e-invoice. Now, for which supplies he has to issue e-invoice? For the business to business, B2B supply, supply to special economic zone, exports, deemed exports were unnotified taxpayer as prescribed by the government. So these are the supplies which are covered under the e-invoice. So when a registered person whose turnover exceeding 50 crores, when he is making a B2B sale, or when he is exporting, when he is supplying to SEZ zones, or when he is making deemed export, then he is supposed to issue e-invoice. Fine. So, what are the documents covered under invoice, e-invoice, which is invoice, debit note, and credit note. So, these are the three documents covered. So, these three put together only e-invoice. Now we will see what are the exemption, which is some of the sectors, even though their turnover may exceed 50 crores, but they will not issue e-invoice. Who are they? Insurance company, or a banking company, or a financial institution, including a non-banking financial corporation. So those people who are all the insurers, when they are making a billing, they are not covered under this e-invoicing, even though their turnover exceeds that prescribed limit. Even the GTA, Goods Transport Agency, then a registered person supplying passenger transportation service like Ola, Uber. So we have seen like they are the people who are supplying transportation, passenger transport, even the red bus. So the people who are undertaking the travel service for taking the passengers, then also they need not issue e-invoice. Similarly, when it is by services by way of cinematic films in multiplex theaters and an SEZ unit. So all these people are exempted from e-invoicing even if their turnover is exceeding that prescribed limit. So now let us briefly understand what is the process of e-invoicing. So it's a normal process like see the seller has continued to issue the invoice in the existing system. Like how he issues, maybe he may use a software for issuing the generating an invoice. If he may be using a tally or an SAP, even an Excel, a small service may even use Excel to issue invoices. Now what is that he has to do? First, he should have to have a offline utility in the system. That is, he will be having an Excel offline utility where he has to fill, once he made the sale, invoice is issued to the customer. What he has to do, he has to feed those details in the Excel format offline utility which is provided, and he has to fill that file and has to convert that into a JSON file. After converting that into JSON file, he has to go to the invoice registration portal. Okay, in invoice registration portal, he has to upload this JSON file. Once they upload the JSON file, the IRP system will validate the data and generates the IRN. IRN is invoice reference number. Then it sends the invoice to the GST system. And it IRP, in addition to that, IRP also adds the QR code. That QR code, which is we all know, quick reference code. QR code stands for quick reference code wherever you are making a payment. So it adds. So two things is being done at the IRP. On our invoice detail, first it generates IRN number, a unique invoice registration number, which is a 64 digits character. It's both combination of alphabets as well as numeric. Okay. So once it adds the QR code, then the system is ready to, yeah, that your invoice registration number, it's the invoice reference number. Now it will be again go to the, so what, same IRN. If you put the same IRN in the GST system, automatically all the details will be updated. Like your e-way bill, first I just your e-way bill is automatically generated by just putting this IRN number. The part A you need not fill, only part B, the supplier transportation details you have to fill in e-way bill. Similarly, in case of GSTR1, the data will get auto populated into GSTR1. So the seller's GSTR1 gets updated with invoice detail. Then he has to issue the invoice to the buyer with IRN and QR code. This is what important. So he receives back and it will be, he has to issue that with the IRN and QR code. So this is what the a process of e-invoicing. So the QR code will consist of these details: GST of a supplier, GST of a recipient, invoice number as given by supplier, date of generation of invoice, invoice value, number of line items, HSN code, unique invoice reference number, it's a hashtag, then IR the generation date. Fine. Hope you have understood the process. Now let us get into the an RTP question in your CA website. Fine. So this is a question just in 1920. That's the year of RTP. So that is why they have 1st October 2020. That is a rule which is that at that time it was existing. So Bali Limited, a registered taxpayer, provides security services to registered person from Mumbai office and Delhi office. The aggregate turnover of Mumbai office and Delhi office in the preceding financial year is 300 crores and 250 crores respectively. For the month of November in the current financial year, Bali Limited prepares duplicate invoice and does not issue e-invoice as it is of the view that its aggregate turnover does not cross the threshold limit to make it liable for issuing e-invoice. Briefly explain whether the view taken by Bali Limited is correct in law, and also explain the advantages of e-invoicing if any. So if you consider, as I told you, from the with effect from 1st October 2020, it is only 500 crores, but that aggregate turnover should be based on the PAN, not GST and plus. Okay, so the eligibility is based on the aggregate turnover on the common PAN. Here, if you consider the aggregate turnover both based on PAN, means it should be in both Mumbai and Delhi office to be aggregated. If you add that, it will increase, the turnover will be more than 500 crores, because the 300 plus 250, which is 550 crores, and it is important that, so it is mandatory for the Bali Limited to issue e-invoice. So the view taken by Bali Limited is not correct according to the provisions in the. Then similarly the advantages. So what are the advantages of e-invoicing? First, auto reporting of invoices in the GST return. So you can automatically reporting. So that's what the process itself. When I explained, I told you automatically the invoices get uploaded. So GSTR one, you need not separately again feed the details. E-way bill also auto generated easily because of this IRN number. The transactions are accurate and no reconciliation is required. We can also eliminate the fake invoices as we started with the objective, because since the IRN number which really clearly identify which is the original invoice different from the fake invoice. And the paperwork, the elimination, as we all aware that we need to the issue invoices has to be issued in triplicate, original for the buyer, duplicate for the transporter, triplicate for the supplier. Now all this printing not required, we can just issue the invoice in a PDF format through mail or whatever which is easier for you, even through mobile WhatsApp you can send. Okay, so hope you have understood the concept of e-invoicing. Thank you students, thank you for the patience listening.